The Committee of the Whole is back in order. Colleagues, we are on Amendment VAB L11 P174 VIII. Senator Borja, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, colleagues. I'll be brief because this amendment is brief and in what it actually does. It requires a plan, that's it. It doesn't transfer the Guam Commission for Educator certification. It does not abolish it. It does not move licensing authority. It does not change a single certification standard. It does not authorize a workshop to replace a degree. What it does is it puts GCEC, GDOE, the Guam Education Board, the University of Guam, the Attorney General, the Department of Administration, and BBR in the same room, requiring them to require a comprehensive plan by January 1, 2027, and bring it back to this floor. Nothing happens without our vote, Mr. Chair. Nothing. This requires the legislature to do anything after a plan is discussed. Colleagues, if you support this amendment, you have not decided on anything. You've decided just to find out. I know there's objection that, this probably didn't have a public hearing, and I get that, Mr. Chair. This was at the, again, with conversations with the Guam School of Education, the University of Guam, the Department of Education, GCC, some of the board members. This wasn't asked to force a conversation, Mr. Chair. Guam has a teacher shortage. Our schools have struggled to recruit and retain. Public policy is never immune from examination, not GCEC's, not GDOE's, not ours. No agency exists by right of tenure. Every agency should be able to show from this time to time that it's still the best way to serve the people of Guam. If the plan comes back and proves that the current structure is the right one, then the GCEC will have proven it with evidence instead of asserting it with tradition. And it'll be stronger for it, Mr. Chair, and I welcome that. I welcome that outcome. All this amendment asks is that we look, and I ask my colleagues for their support, Mr. Chair.
On the amendment, Senator Tatague, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I'm sure not just myself, but other senators have received letters from board members from the Guam Commission of Educators. And, when I was receiving those emails, I decided to give the superintendent, who was actually off island at the time, a call and ask her, what is her reasoning to have this, under DOE? And then she sent out, as we all received, sent out an explanation, a press release explaining her position, which was helpful to make a decision. But the concern I have is not just her, not just a letter from Michelle Santos, Dr. Michelle Santos, who's the executive director, not supporting this amendment, as well as there was other individuals with great concern. So I'm just trying to wrap my head around this, because the proffer of this amendment saying that nothing's going to happen because it's going to have to be implemented, an implementation plan required no later than January 1st, 2027. The superintendent of education shall submit to Legislature and chairman of the board, comprehensive absorb the plan, put in place, the implementation shall be developed in consultation. That's helpful to know, because we're bringing a bunch of people to the table to provide the insight and information that's needed on how we're going to move forward, and really why is it so needed. But so my question to the proffer of the amendment, Mr. Chair, is just to ask whether there is a timeline for them to even get to the, because this implementation plan required no later than January 1st. Where does it say that they all supposed to meet prior to that implementation plan? So you want to, make sure everybody within, on the inception of this amendment, they meet within 10 days, 20 days to discuss this, and then provide the implementation plan. So I was just wondering if there's anything in here that requires them to get together before that time.
Does the author yield?
There isn't anything in here, Mr. Chair. I guess the assumption, and if we want to put it in there, I'm open to an amendment, is that GDOE, especially in GCEC, We'll coordinate. The superintendent will lead this effort, Mr. Chair.
Senator Tadigui, you have the floor.
Is there any, Mr. Chair, is there any amendment coming forth on his closing, or to put in a timeline to ensure that they do all come together, all 7 of these consultation in consultation with the Education Certification, Guam Board of Education Board, UVG, Department of Administration, BBMR, Office of Attorney General, such educator, school administration, military, family, and public and private. I'm just trying to find here where, Mr. Chair, who's going to take the lead on this to get all these individuals together to prepare this implementation? Is there a section that I'm missing here that somebody is going to take the lead on this to ensure it happens, or is it expected of the Commission of Educated and Certificate Transition, because they do have a director?
Does the author yield?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I mean, the intent is that GCEC, because they're going to be the organization that is ultimately that this affects primarily, Mr. Chair, is going to be the one that coordinates that. But if we want to write that out, I mean, I'll proffer a member at the end.
Senator Tadigui, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to speak on it and for the author to answer my questions. Thank you.
On the amendment, anyone else? Senator Gumatauto, you're recognized.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I do rise in support of the amendment. I think I was encouraged during the recent confirmation hearing for one of the members of the Guam Commission for Educator Certification with a terminal degree as part of the requirements. Interestingly, the discussion focused on research and how we can use research to better our teachers and better the delivery of education in our public school system. And again, this is about implementing a plan or a creation of a plan. It's all the stakeholders are in play, but I'm very encouraged, Mr. Chair, by the idea that using the research to be able to guide whether it's performance standards, measurable timelines for certification, or the whole idea of phased implementation. They're going to use the data to be able to help put us forward. That's only kind of a handful, but it's getting them in a room, getting them to discuss. Maybe they say no, but at least in terms of getting them in one place to discuss moving forward. Obviously, the end game is to be able to get into the Interstate Teacher Mobility Compact. And Mr. Chair, at the moment, Guam is already a participant in the broader NASD-TEC interstate agreement, which allows educators holding an out-of-state license to get a certificate on island. But it's 2026. We need to modernize this ability to get more teachers in our classrooms, and I think it's an important step for this, and I do support the amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
On the amendment, anyone else wish to speak on the amendment? Would the author like to close?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just to clarify, I spoke to the retiring speaker earlier in regards to who is responsible, and in the amendment it says that the superintendent of education will be the one to submit the plan, so she'll be responsible to ensure that we get people to the table and work on the plan. Mr. Chair, I'm just going to waive my closing.
On the amendment, is there any objection? Amendment carries. Colleagues, we are on a amendment from another member. I think we'll go ahead and move forward and set this aside and wait for the member to arrive. So we are now then setting that aside, and it will be the first thing when the member arrives. But we are now on Amendment TTT L11 P174. Mayor's Council. Senator Tadigui, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Colleagues, as you know, there was an amendment that was passed prior to this amendment, lifting the small purchase from 25,000 up to 250,000. So that's far-reaching than what my amendment was going to give the Mayor's Council to implement. And of course, this is coming from the Mayor's Council, who requested this increase, but I did reach out to them and let them know what the other prior amendment established, and they are they're fine. So with that being said, Mr. Chair, I'd like to withdraw my amendment.
On the amendment to withdraw, no objections? Amendment's withdrawn. Next amendment is also by a member, next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, are on 6, are on and 7, and 8. So we will put those aside, and once again, when the members arrive, we will start in the same order. We will move on to now Amendment JAL L11 P174. On the amendment, he's in the House. I believe he was on a bathroom break. Senator Lujan, as you arrive for landing in your chair right about now.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, actually this amendment is just was requested by the CFO, the legislative CFO. It's no additional monies. It's just doing actually pretty much house cleaning basically in regards to designation and where these funds are already there. The accounts are already separate at this point, and it's just a little bit of, again, just house cleaning measures and making everything in order in case the CFO is absent or is unable to make the payments. Whoever is in her position is able to make that payment right off the bat. So it's just a house cleaning measure, Mr. Chair.
On the amendment, anyone wish to speak on the amendment? Seeing and hearing none, would you want to close, Senator?
I waive my closure.
Senator Joe, yes, I will not miss you. Go ahead, Senator Stonski.
No, mine's very simple.
Sure.
Everybody's getting a lump sum. I mean, what do you need to do housekeeping when they can decide that among themselves, Core? You decided with your rules and done? I'm just curious, but I support it. Thank you.
Thank you. On the amendment, no one wishing to speak. Want to close?
I waive my closure, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Any objections on the amendment, the Lujan amendment? Seeing and hearing none, amendment carries.
Yeah.
The next one. Okay. Once again, member not present, so we'll entertain it when the member returns. On this amendment, that is next. It is TTT L11 P174 II. Senator Tadic, will you recognize?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and colleagues. Colleagues, I rise to propose this amendment to improve clarifying the Guam Business Privilege Tax Law as it relates to the military buildup contract. The amendment is on line 11, page 174, adding a new subsection to Chapter 12, miscellaneous provisions. As you can read in this amendment, it just clearly strikes out the threshold of $10 million, and at the same time, it incorporates derived by a primary contractor as defined in 26101 from a military buildup construction contract. Now, what makes this different, what's compared into the budget bill right now, the substituted budget bill? It's all contracts. All contracts. Anything that's 10 million and above deals with that. So what I'm doing is changing that. We tried to incorporate build-up earlier in my amendment, just to ensure and make clear that these are military build-up construction contracts and nothing more. This does not affect American Bakery. This does not affect vendors that work at the military or on base. This does not affect the small businesses that do their daily work. The DoD, colleagues, incorporates in every contract for this military buildup the BPT. It's included in the contract in which they pay for. That contractor is not paying for it. Even if it's an off-island company coming to Guam and grabbing up some of those huge military contracts, even if it's them, their BBT or taxes, it's already built into the contract for them, the DOD, to pay for. The amendment does two things again. First, it removes the $10 million threshold that was added during the last year's budget process. Second, it improves the law by replacing the general reference to military contracts, as I mentioned, with a military buildup construction contracts, clearly. And for the first time, it provides clear statutory definition of what those contracts are. That definition does not exist under current law. It is included here because I listened to the concerns that were raised during the earlier debate. When I first proposed removing the $10 million threshold during Chapter 1, several colleagues opposed the amendment by naming local businesses they believe would affect companies, again, like American Bakery, Guam Bakery, Triple J, Pacific Grocers, Pacific Unlimited, GTA, Docomo, and other were cited as an example. These concerns deserve to be taken seriously, of course. I agree. So I did what we should have always done when questions are raised about legislation. I went back to the statute. I reviewed the current law. I looked at the publicly available contract awards, and I examined how these provisions actually operate. What I find is that many of those examples were raised without first determining whether those companies actually fall within the current statutory framework. Some of those businesses do have contracts with the federal government, as I mentioned above. Those are legitimate federal contracts. They're not military buildup contracts, just contracts. But they are fundamentally different. Those procurement and service contracts, or normal everyday contracts with the military government. DOD clearly has provided additional funding into this buildup on this island. $930 million is expected additional to come to Guam just within next year. And that money should be captured by what we all agreed to at the very beginning of this military buildup, that Guam would also prosper with it. So I ask my colleagues for their support for this amendment to clarify. It is military buildup construction contracts.
Thank you, Senator. On the amendment, anyone wish to speak on the amendment? Senator Terlai, you're recognized.
I'm just trying to get their attention. If I could get one copy of this one I'm missing in my packet, just that one amendment.
Are you still going to speak, or were you just requesting the amendment? Okay. We can go to another member while you read. Anybody else wishing to speak on the amendment? Senator Parkinson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise in support of the amendment to tax fairly the military buildup that's coming here to Guam. I firmly believe that this military buildup is a once-in-a-generation opportunity for our island to not only mitigate some of the unforeseen effects of the military buildup, but also to act as almost seed money for us to turn new industries in Guam into new pillars supporting our island. Because one of the refrains we had, in previous budget seasons when we were spending very liberally was that, hey, this temporary buildup is temporary. This buildup is temporary. And we're not going to see the same revenues that we were seeing in the times of the previous budget chair in the future. And I hear that. I hear that. And so wouldn't it make more sense now to make hay while the sun is shining? To take advantage of this military buildup so it's not taking advantage of us, to tax them at a fair rate. As the retiring speaker said, these, like the 5% before, was written into the contract. These are not our mom and pop stores that we were intending to give a BPT reduction to, because if that's who was getting it, I would support that. But these are not small local businesses. These, a lot of these are big military contractors from off-island with no real stake in the game, with no real stake in the community, who are here to make some money. And they were willing to pay a 5% rate, and we reduced it. And so, for me, that just really made no sense, because one of the big selling points of this buildup was the increased revenue. But to be giving that revenue away right back to these contractors, to the military-industrial complex, it's throwing the baby out with the bathwater, pursuing this idea of tax cuts at all costs. And so I would like to make an amendment to the amendment to, I would like to make an amendment to the amendment to bring, for military contracts, a 6% BPT. I would like to make that amendment that for these military contracts that qualify, these military buildup contracts that qualify, we do it with a, actually I amend that. Let's do it with a 5% BPT. Let's do it with a 5% BPT, because as previous testimony shown, that was already in the contracts for a lot of these military industrial complex companies. So if we just go back to the status quo of a 5% BPT for military contracts, I think that we will be in a much better place. It will be painless for everyone because the DoD already paid this. And so that's my amendment, Mr. Chair.
On the amendment to the amendment, does everybody understand the amendment to the amendment? Are there any discussions? Yes, Senator Cowell.
Apologies, Mr. Chair. It would be for the amendment.
Sure, we'll recognize you on the main amendment. On the amendment to the amendment, is there any discussion? Any objection to the amendment to the amendment? Senator Taitagui, sorry, you want to speak to the amendment on the amendment?
The amendment to the amendment, again, is to raise it to 5% for...
Please go back.
Yeah, that's...
Please go back on the microphone,
Sorry.
Senator
Yeah,
Parkinson. Do you yield to the question from the mover?
Yes. I had originally suggested to amend it to 6%, but I then amended that to, let's just do it 5%, just to get it back to where it was.
I do have questions on... I do have a question.
Please proceed, Senator.
Okay. It is currently 5%. Even up to now, it is, so the amendment is 5%.
I'm sorry, I apologize. I had a very long morning. So far. Yes, my apologies. I deeply apologize, Mr. Chair. I misspoke. I did mean to say 6%, and I had a brain fart. My apologies. I did mean 6%.
On the amendment to the amendment.
Okay, that being said, that was clarified, Mr. Chair. You know, I'm not asking for any more. You know, I'm asking what the FY26 budget, you know, had put, what we passed in FY26, and now that's already incorporated in this FY27 budget. You know, it only just withdraws the takes away the threshold of 10 million. That was my recommendation. So I have to, again, respectfully object.
On the amendment to the amendment, anyone else wish to speak? Seeing and hearing none, do you want to close, Senator Parkinson?
Yes, I will want to close. Because, I think this really needs to go back to a larger discussion we have. I don't believe that it's going to be resolved in this session, but I do think that my colleagues need to give some serious thought about what we want to be getting out of this military buildup. I think that we could sustain higher levels of tax revenue from the military buildup specifically because these projects are meant for Guam and Guam only. One of the big concerns with overtaxation, and this is a fair concern, is that we scare businesses away from starting. But this is the one time in history this is not going to be true for us because these contracts are coming to Guam. If they get scared off from these contracts, there's no place else to go. There's no competing market for them to go. Those dollars for the Guam buildup are only going to be spent on Guam. And there is a lot of it. There is so much money. It is a third of our economy. Of all the things you see on the island, all the businesses, all the malls, all the movie theaters, everything you see, consider that's 2/3 of our economy. The other 1/3 you don't see is what's happening with the military buildup. That is a third of our, what is it, $10 billion $10 billion economy. They're a third of that. And so while this buildup is temporary, we must consider a higher level of taxation for the military-industrial complex that is coming here to Guam. I would consider just getting it to 5%, barely scratching their fair share of mitigating the damages the buildup is inadvertently causing. We haven't even gotten to a point where we are using the revenues from that to better the island. We're just at a point where we're just trying to maintain. And that's really the big problem is we're not trying to maintain, we're trying to grow, we're trying to make it better, Don't have a brain fart with me and settle for less at 5%. Push for more. Push for more because Guam deserves more. We are in a unique negotiating position that we may never be in again. We may never be in the position to negotiate for higher revenues for our island from people, that don't necessarily live here. This is federal DOD money coming to the island. We're not taxing our local small businesses to achieve these extra revenues. We're doing it based on the commitments of the United States federal government. And so again, once again, my colleagues, to my people of Guam, let's have a real conversation that now that the military buildup is here, honestly, we should have had this conversation long before the military buildup was here about what these taxation rates were going to be, because it just seems folly that now that we are in the height of the military buildup, we are cutting our legs out from under us and reducing the revenues from this once-in-a-generation event. So I won't belabor the point too much longer. I ask my colleagues to not object to this, just let the 6% go through, and let's generate some extra revenues. I think it would surprise us how much that could really help our current financial situation. And with that, Mr. Chair, I yield the rest of my time. Thank you.
On the amendment to the amendment, there's been an objection. All in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. Amendment fails. On the main amendment, Senator Calvo, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, recognizing the fact that the military buildup is of limited time, just a few years we have, and this amendment pertains to just a 5% measured, additional 1%. that could be very beneficial and helpful to our island. I have no problem supporting this, but I do have curious questions regarding this bill, and I would like to know if the author of the bill would yield to some questions. My question, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chair, is my primary concern is if any local business will be affected by this amendment. And I'm not, we have to be careful and find the right balance when we decide on things. And if it affects businesses, I know that that was clarified earlier, but what about businesses that do supply to the military contractors? Will this amendment be affecting local businesses that are servicing military contractors? Mr. Chair, I'd like to direct the question to the author of the amendment.
Does the author yield?
Absolutely. And if you look at the legislation, as I mentioned, I went back to the drawing board to define what military buildup construction contracts means. Is any contract, task order, delivery, or other purchase order agreement or other contractual instruments, including any amendment, modification, extension, or upon hereto awarded directly by the United States Department of Defense on military department, United States Army Corps of Engineers, naval facilities, and any other federal agencies acting on behalf of the Department of Defense for the planning, design, architectural, engineering, surveying, construction, management, site preparation, construction, reconstruction, renovation, expansions, repair, or improvement of military facilities, infrastructure, utilities, roads, bridges, airfields, points, training range, housing, or other capital improvements associated with the relocation, expansion, sustainment, or modernization of the United States military presence on Guam. And it clearly states too, Mr. Chair, that when these military buildup contracts are negotiated between any company, whether it's for $10 or $10 million, the 5% GPT is already built in for DOD to pay for that part of the tax. So anything that deals with military buildup. Now, as mentioned before, the military is going to leave, I mean, it's almost done. 5 more years, it's over. The opportunity for us to avail ourselves the promises that were made when the discussion happened in 2006. I'm talking about the 4 pillars. I'm talking about what is it for Guam that we can get in return for the impact of this military buildup. Again, anything that's military buildup related, 5% of the BPT is already paid for by the military, DOD, by DOD, Department of Defense. And if there's a question on whether there's a subcontractor, let me remind you, if there's a subcontractor, let's say this company from off-island comes in, gets a huge contract, even below $10 million, gets a contract, and they need to subcontract. You cannot you can't double taxation. That's illegal. So you can't double tax that subcontractor. It's already been taxed. So I hope that answers your question, that providing the commissary with food from our local vendors does not constitute as a military buildup contract.
Thank you. I appreciate the response, and thank you to the author for indulging. I just wanted to make sure because it expands. You know, we always talk about protecting our local businesses, and at the current rate that we have, where our tourism is really not doing very well, we have to take good care of our businesses, especially the small ones. We have a lot of wholesalers here. We supply raw mats, not just food, not just services, but I just wanted to make sure that our businesses will not be affected by this amendment. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the author of the amendment for indulging me.
Thank you. On the amendment, anybody else wish to speak on the amendment? Senator Terlai, you recognize.
Thank you. So on the tight degree amendment, I appreciate the changes that the sponsor has made to this amendment, and especially definitions, including those. And I think this is going to be very, very helpful for revenue and taxation to implement with the additional information. And I guess I would ask if the sponsor would yield, has there been any discussion with Rev and Tax? And with this type of definition, do they anticipate any reduction in who is currently fitting under this provision of law?
Does the sponsor yield?
To verify the question being asked, I'm going to take the latter one where it says, is there any reduction in taxes coming to the government of Guam? No, in fact, there's an increase of revenue. We're kind of seeing that right now with the increase in withholding and corporate tax, because we've seen a huge drop in the BPT since its rollback from 5 to 4.5. But we're now seeing, and I even mentioned that during the one of the discussions with BBMR, are they noticing that that inclusion of withholding and corporate tax has to do with military buildup? And he said it could be. So it definitely won't be deleted, as far as, not deleted, but a lessened amount of taxes. That was the latter question, I believe. I hope that answered it. The first question again, if you can repeat.
No, the question is just by changing the definition or changing the word and then defining it, does revenue and taxation anticipate that this decreases the field that is currently being taxed under this subsection?
No.
We're hoping to increase, but I just want to make sure they haven't said that it decreases that field.
Not at all, especially when you look at these contracts that are between the contractor and DOD. It clearly states that they take care of the 5%. DOD takes care of the 5% and includes it. So whenever you're looking at contracts like this, you can determine right off the bat this is a military buildup contract and not a contract that's, organic, that keeps going, moving every year.
All right. Well, I wanted to just be sure that we're not, that the law's already in place, and we just want to expand on that. We don't want it to decrease. So I just wanted to make sure that this is clearly an expansion as intended and not an inadvertent decrease by narrowing the terms. But I do appreciate that that is very, very clear by this amendment that this applies to the primary contractor only. Subcontractors are not included. And so I like it because it's more consistent with the current law, easy to define who covered here. I hope that revenue and taxation will have no problem with it. So I do appreciate all the work that was put into this further amendment.
Thank you. Before I go to members, I just want to make sure we're clear, Senator. Your comment that the BPT is much lower, it's not. It's tracking 10 million above currently. But I do agree with you in terms of what's available for appropriation in this budget. But BPT right now is actually performing higher at 10 million more currently right now. That's why our excess revenue is $88 million.
Mr. Chair,
yes.
if I may, I'm looking at the CRER report, and I'm seeing it lower, and that's what I talked about during the SES meeting. Why is the BPT lower? Now, that was on the CRER report that was showing. So are we seeing that in the the June CRER is reporting higher now?
BPT is performing at 10 million more than what was adopted, and I'll get that to you very clearly.
Thank you.
Any other member wish to speak on the amendment? Yes, Senator Matata, you're recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I object to this amendment. I'm not sure my objection to a similar amendment earlier this session was clear, so let me reiterate. Our number one industry since 1970, tourism, is at its weakest point. Federal spending remains the one industry, or collective policy, if you will, holding the Guam economy up right now. Guam has just 3,477 total employer establishments on base and off, and every single one of them is already fighting to grow their businesses in 2026. This amendment would erase that particular business model in one stroke. Colleagues, this business model has taken hit after hit since 2011. Businesses trying to expand into the federal space took one on the chin with the 2013 sequester on DoD contracts. 6 years later, with the global COVID-19 pandemic, a second DoD sequester in 2021, Typhoon Mawar in 2023, and back-to-back storms this year. I must reiterate that this amendment would be one more hit. 53,941 Guam residents work for Guam-based companies that operate on and off base, heavy equipment operators and mechanics, electricians, engineers, small engine mechanics, HVAC technicians, warehousemen, delivery drivers, project managers, carpenters, and masons. Not a single one of these folks were asked what they think of this policy amendment. Their employers, Guam entrepreneurs at every level, were not asked either. I will not back any amendment that claws money out of the engine of our economy because we're afraid the buildup might go away. Mr. Chair, I remember being in another branch of government when the 2006 Defense Policy Review Initiative Roadmap between the United States and Japan was signed. 20 years later, it is clear that foundational agreement will outlast the last projects on Camp Laws and the expansion at Andersen Air Force Base and Naval Base Guam in the years, in the decades to come. We should not sink our homegrown workforce on base and off. We need to build Guam companies up and not tear them down. I opposed this same policy last fiscal year when it targeted military contractors, and I oppose it again today. And I urge my colleagues to vote no. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
On the amendment, anyone wish to speak on the amendment? Senator, Ranking Member Tina Rose Muñoz Barnes.
It's not a comment, maybe just a point of inquiry as it relates to the businesses that will be affected. Listening to the previous speaker and then the original author of the bill. So my question is, Mr. Chair, is the impact based on this 5% increase affect any local business here on Guam, whether it be a subcontractor or having an MOU with any of the federal contracts?
Does the mover yield? Who do you want to yield to that clarification, Ranking Member? Who would you like to yield to that question?
I like both of them because I just wanted to get a clarification based on what the previous speaker from Talafofa spoke about, but also to the author, the proffer of the amendment. So I just wanted a clarification to make sure, because I'm hearing two.
Senator Gumtato, do you yield? Senator Tadigui, do you yield?
Yes, I do yield. Yeah, absolutely. She deserves a response to that. You know, we got to make sure that the information that's getting out to the people on this floor is correct, as well as those who are listening. You know, you had an article out by John Martinez in the PDN explaining the whole scenario about this military buildup and the 5%. Now, I clarified earlier that any contract that's military buildup So if a contractor comes to the island and gets a contract for military buildup, if Paris Brothers get a contract for military buildup, you have to understand they do not pay 5% BPT. They do not pay it. It's paid by Department of Defense. They pay the BPT, not anyone else, but DOD. And then they talked about subcontractor, that was mentioned. And I was telling another colleague was concerned about subcontractor. You can't double tax. Once a project has been taxed, there's a thing that's called double taxation, and you can't do double taxation. So let's say this one company comes to, Vargas company comes to the island, gets a military buildup contract, which is defined in this amendment. And please, colleagues, take an opportunity to read the definition for the purpose, the definition of this amendment. For the purpose of this paragraph, military buildup construction contract. It's clear. But it backed again to the subcontractor. So if a Vargas company comes from off island, big company gets a huge contract, the BPT is already paid. Now they want to go to a subcontractor, maybe get a hold of Paris Brothers, might have some, cement trucks that are needed. They can't tax Paris Brothers again because that's double taxation. I hope that answers the good senator.
I'll listen further. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ranking Member. We'll take a 1-minute recess. The committee of the whole is back in order, and folks, if you want to come up and take a look, I got the May CRER, and BPT is tracking 13 million above adopted levels.
What month is that, sir?
May, 13 million above the adopted levels. You can have, CRERs are up here. So on the amendment, anyone else wish to speak on the amendment? You're good? You want to speak? Okay, Senator San Agustin, you're recognized.
Mr. Chairman, you know, as listening to all the comments being given, I'm kind of bothered when somebody's going to tell me that me as a contractor, right, if I bid on a contract with DOD, DOD is going to pay the 5%. DOD don't pay anything but what the bid is for. You as a contractor pays it. You pay the 5% because it's part of your bid. You include it. That's how you bid it out. So let's start with that. That's one. Now I agree there's no double taxation. But if the contractor wants, he can pass it down and say, no, I give you this percentage of work. Now you pay for that, which is part of the cost, the total cost. I'm trying to get all of people at Revenue and Taxation to take a look at this. And then on this amendment, it removes exceeding 10 million. So in other words, there's no cap no more. I got reservations on that. When you don't have a cap, you know, to start with, so it's initially 10 million was the cap, then that's when you start taxing. But now there's no cap. Even if it's a 2 or 3 million, you're 5%. Not comfortable with that. So I just wanted to make that clear, but if time allows, I'm waiting for the call back from Revenue and Tax to talk to them about how this works, because I'm in support of the 4%, so I'm not going to change. So to go to 5 now for anybody, and then you don't have a cap, we don't have a starting point where you must be 10 million and above. Now there's no more. That means any amount. That's really what it's saying. Derive or primary contractor is defined from a military build-up construction contract, striking exceeding 10 million. That means very simple. You don't reach 10 million, you're hit with it. Doesn't matter, from 0 to whatever is what it's telling me. And I got some reservations on that one because of that. And anything else dealing with taxes, I would have to call my former employer, because that's what I used to do for a living for 12 years, or actually longer than that. So I'm quite familiar with taxes. So with that, if I come back later, if it still exists, time exists, then I'll do that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
On the amendment, anyone else wish to speak on the amendment? Senator Tadigui, would you like to close?
Mr. Chair, can I just take 1 minute, please? 1 minute.
1 minute recess.
And there has already been an objection, and it's ironic that this objection has to do with trying to scare everybody here that people are going to lose their jobs because of this particular amendment. And that is so false, so disingenuous, such a lie. It has nothing to do with that. No, the sky's not falling down. But I will tell you one thing. A contractor even told me directly that they do not pay for the 5% BPT on a contract. So let me give you an example. The contract between an individual vendor is $10 million. Let's just, for the sake, $10 million. In the contract, they will have separate from the contract amount of the project of 10 million, they will have separate 500,000, which is 5% of the BPT, separate from the agreement that DOD will shoulder the cost of the BPT. How much more simple can I explain it to everybody? American Bakery, Docomo, all these companies are not paying the BPT on these military contracts. Docomo does not even have a military buildup contract. American Bakery doesn't even have a military buildup contract. All these small business people are talking about are not military buildup contracts. When the military was coming to Guam and saying, we want to build up our arsenal here, we want to build up and bring people from Okinawa, transfer all these people here, put a bigger target on our heads. We all sat down, even in there was the 30th Guam Legislature. I'll never forget all the town hall meetings we were again, and all the issues that will come about from having the military come to Guam. How can we fix it? Well, it was brought up that funding that will come from this buildup, hundreds of millions of dollars that will come from this buildup onto Guam, will be taxed. Now, we're losing some of that, my colleagues, because these companies are coming in from the mainland, taking these huge contracts that can go to our local contractors, and they're having their checks sent to their state to try and bypass paying any taxes. But let's make it clear, and everyone listening, we do not pay the BPT on any military contract. Talk to a contractor. Has anybody here had a military buildup contract? No. So how do you know? Have you talked to somebody, a contractor, that got a military buildup contract to find out what that contract said? Anybody? No. Well, I have. I did my homework. And I addressed concerns in this new amendment that had a clear definition what is military contract means. We have lowered down the BPT to 4%. And though it's trailing, it's saying, no, there's some, I still haven't looked at it yet, but if I'm not mistaken, there's some negative amounts into that BPT. And we're going to see the same dip in taxes from BPT again next year. But guess what? Our expenses on this island continues to grow like everybody else. Inflation has gotten so high, and we have an opportunity now, within the next 5 years, before the military buildup stops, before the military DOD decides to take it somewhere else to protect the Americas. And we are going to lose out once again when a promise was made that this military buildup was going to help our island. So I ask my colleagues, please, for their support on this.
Thank you, Senator. On the Taligui amendment, there has been an objection. All those in favor of the amendment, please indicate by raising your hand. Amendment fails. Colleagues, we are going back to the amendments that were proffered by members who are now present, and that would be, the clerks will correct me if I'm wrong, TMT P174 IV. Senator Chalahi, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is an amendment to add a new section that reads, notwithstanding any other provision of law, the Guam Fire Department is authorized to use the appropriation in Chapter 5, Section 1, AA4 for the establishment of a rescue base on the east coast of Guam and may partner with GVB or any agency in this regard. And I'm putting this in not to take away any money for the project in Tumon, but in case they are able to get that project funded through grants, as they have said so many times, or through an additional increase from GVB to take care of both of these, then I think they're both very, very much needed for the safety of the people of Guam and our visitors. This, again, has been discussed in the last 10 years and kind of seems to be rotating around the agencies as to who might get it done or who, is advocating for it more. A lot of talk about getting it through federal grants, and I thought they were very close, and I was very optimistic, but that was years ago. So that included the Department of Agriculture and the port and the marinas management and fire department itself and fishermen independently very, very concerned for their own safety, taking part in all these meetings that had occurred. And we did get a promise at one time that I thought might really come true because it was an actual construction project for the Elic Bridge, where DPW was going to remove the access point there, but many people at the public hearing protested, or not protested, but objected to that, and pretty much begged DPW to keep an access point there at Elic. And they did say they were going to accommodate that. And I remember this because I was at the hearings, and Senator Tom Atta was the senator at the time, and with oversight over DPW, and it seemed like that was going to be accommodated. But in the end, as you all can see, there is no access point for the boats there and no safe way for emergency personnel to access the east side, either there or Talafofo, Pago Bay. It's very, very difficult. So they just need a little help to get a very workable access point. And because it's been going on about 10 years now, I just think we are, it's really deterred the fishermen in their use of that side of the island. And I think we shouldn't be deterring them. We should be helping them and encouraging them to gain access. At one point, GPA, as part of their mitigation for another project, had built a boat ramp in Alahan. But as you can see now, that was not, I guess, feasible because it couldn't last. It was very, very short last. And they don't ever propose, at least what I've heard, they don't propose putting one in there again. It seems to be not a feasible area. But wherever it is feasible on the east side, this is just to give them that option, to give them that kind of, hopefully, motivation to focus on that as well. Again, this is a rescue base on the east side of Guam. Titus Masi.
On the Talai amendment, anyone wish to speak? Seeing, hearing none, you want to close? Oh, sorry. Senator Gumitauta, you recognize?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, for allowing me to rise in support of the amendment, knowing that the priority is and remains the Tumon Rescue Base. I can get behind this, and I would hope the author of the amendment would also get behind the Tumon Rescue Base as part of this bigger budget document. There is a lot of work that is happening behind the scenes, both here and in Washington, D.C., to support that. I believe the Office of the Governor, the State Clearinghouse, is also helping out the effort. Priority number one is to help get Tumon, and agree with the senator from Jotnia that there will be a rescue base on, and I say because I live in Talafofo, on our side of the island, whether it is near her area there at Ipan as a best launch point for the rescue teams that would maybe come out of Inarajan, the expansion of the Talafofo fire station, or the new Talafofo precinct to be able to support operations on that side of the island. So I'm very excited, and I do rise in support and ask my colleagues to support this particular amendment. Thank you.
On the amendment, anybody wish to speak? Senator Parkinson, you recognize.
Yeah, I got a question for the author. Was there a public hearing for this amendment?
Does the author yield?
Yes, thank you. This is an amendment to an existing part of the bill that has an identical language, except where it says Tumon, this puts East Coast of Guam. So yes, they've been discussing this. Mm-hmm.
Senator Parkinson, you're recognized.
Okay, so there has been no public hearing for this bill, but something similar to it.
Is that a question to the author? Yes. Does the author yield?
Yes, and that is the statutory requirement, that it be the same subject matter.
Senator Parkinson, you have the floor.
So I support this amendment. I really do. I think it's a good amendment. But I do have to just point out the hypocrisy, the rampant hypocrisy of objecting over and over and over and over again to bills that haven't had a public hearing, and yet here we are, when it's their own bills, suddenly these don't need public hearings and we have no objection to them. So, like I said, I think this is a fine amendment. This is the budget season. This is the time we should be doing these kind of amendments. And I would just like, again, to point out the hypocrisy for the people of Guam, for those that would call for, where is the public hearing? Where is the public hearing? Where is the public hearing? But no public hearing for this. We had a public hearing for the Tumon one. We got to hear how everybody felt about that location. But we never had any feedback on how this location was felt. And so I just wanted to point that out. I support this amendment. I have no objections to it. That will be voted.
On the amendment, would the author like to close?
Yes. I think some people might see hypocrisy if they don't understand what the law actually says, and the law says if it's the same subject matter as what had the public hearing, then it's acceptable. It also says that, and this bill, this big bill that we are working on, included Tumon, an appropriation for a Tumon rescue base, a Tumon Bay rescue base. I don't think that particularly had a public hearing, but it was included as part of the budget. It's a budgetary item. It's what are we going to use the money for? We're giving it to GVB, we're giving it to GFD, and they were very specific that it's going to be used for this purpose. So this is only an amendment to that was already in the budget bill, amending the purpose. And that is very much in compliance with the law. And I'm just sorry they don't understand that. But I am glad that they support that we are going to focus as well on this east coast of Guam. And as one of the previous speakers talked about, the clearinghouse, yes, that's what happened about 10 years ago when I think Department of Ag said they were this close to getting one down in Talafofo Bay, or at least they were already soliciting comments from people as to that location or the different locations. So I do hope that this will come to fruition for sure.
On the amendment, any objection? Amendment carries. Colleagues, we are now on Amendment TMT P174 VI. Senator Terlahi, you're recognized.
Sorry, there was a V.
Yes, V5I.
Yeah, but there's another one
5-1.
before that. There's a V. Yeah, there's a V and a VI.
I will consult with the clerks. 1 minute recess. We're back from recess. Correction, colleagues, my packet was missing one for some reason. So correct, TMT P174V. Senator Terlahi, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You'll notice there's about 5 provisions or floor amendments that talk about customs. The last one is a criminal statute, but the first 4, including this one we're on right now, these are regarding the civil statutes and the civil penalties and the civil requirements. So the first one, and these are all the subject of a bill that did have a public hearing. We received the full support of Customs. In fact, they sent in a couple minor changes, which we have incorporated as well. And I don't recall any objection to that bill at the hearing. So the First Amendment is just reiterating that Customs can put holds on containers, and when it does, it will control where those containers will go, whether they will be held there on the premises or they can be allowed to be transferred by the director to a Customs designated secured facility. And so it's just making that language a little bit more tighter, because later on, the next one is to increase the penalties for violation. So we want the language to be very, very clear as to what the requirements are, or who can exempt anyone from those requirements. And just for a little background, this came to my attention because there was a story in the news about a container that had been moved, not at the direction of Customs, but at the director of someone else, and calling up and saying that allow that container to be moved. And then, sure enough, when Customs finally got to that container, it was already opened. And of course, the question always exists: if these containers are put on hold by Customs for any reason, it's because maybe they suspect contraband. And if they're opened before Customs can get there to inspect them, then we have no idea whether there was or was not contraband, whether it's been distributed to our community already. So this was the subject of an investigation. And and then we did, of course, check the Customs at the background and how was their enforcement going. And the reason that they supported the bill was because they said they could use all the backup that they could get in regards to these enforcements and these policies. And they do believe that this will deter and help them to stop. Particularly, was very interested in the drugs coming in, but they said all contraband. So the First Amendment is pretty much on subsection B, just reiterating other parts of the statute that say that there shall be a hold, and this one gives the director the authority to transfer or remove to a Customs designated secured facility. and those are already established. I want to make one technical amendment, and that is in subsection B, 1, 2, 3, about the fourth line in the middle, there's the word shall. That's a typo, and that needs to be deleted. So can I just make that amendment right now to delete the word shall? There's a may up ahead, before that, so it's a may, the director may.
So there,
Yes, just
So-
delete the word shall.
so there is no may here, so it will
Yeah, in
just
the beginning of that line, it says,
may under, okay.
yeah, may under the Director of Customs be transferred.
So
Yeah.
line through the shall
Yes, please.
after customs. On the amendment to the amendment, any objections? Senator Lujan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I rise in support of this amendment. I just have an amendment to the amendment as well. It's on section B as well, line 1, 2, 3, 4, after the Director of Customs. That was just amended. Director of Customs, just comma, to add Chief of Customs, comma, or their designee.
Senator, I'm going to go ahead and dispose of this amendment and then recognize you
Okay.
and
Thank you.
give you the time
Shoot,
to
shoot.
be able
Thank
to
you.
proffer that, because that would be amending the amendment.
Thank you.
So let's dispose of this motion. Any objections on the amendment to the amendment? Hearing and seeing none, amendment passes. Senator Chirla, you still have the floor.
All right, I'll yield the floor for this first amendment. Thank
Okay,
you.
so Senator Lujan, I'll recognize you at this time for your comments as well as moving your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, I'm in full support of this amendment, but I'm adding an amendment to the amendment on line 4, where after the Director of Customs be a comma, Chief of Customs, comma, or their designee, and then shall be transferred.
Senator,
that's it.
can you repeat that amendment
Okay.
once again?
On line 4,
1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, starting from,
after Director of Customs,
okay.
comma, Chief of Customs, comma.
You're adding Chief of Customs?
Yes, adding Chief of Customs, comma, adding or their designee.
Comma,
Chief
or
of Customs.
their designee. Does everybody understand the amendment to the amendment?
I just have a point of inquiry as it relates to the amendment.
Yes.
I just want to know if the author of the amendment can share if the director and the chief, are they two different people?
What message?
Senator Lujan, do you yield to the question, is the chief different than the director?
Yes, he
there a
is.
Chief? Yes.
Yes,
there-
he is.
I just wanted to make
Yeah,
sure.
there's a director and then there's a chief, yes.
Then there's the chief.
Yes,
Thank you.
you're welcome. On the amendment, does everybody understand the amendment? Is there any objections to the amendment? Amendment carries. Clerks, you're good, right? Okay. Anything else, Senator Lujan?
Yes, and also the amendment also to the container freight station or approved provisional inspection site.
Please explain where that amendment would go, Senator.
That would be 1, 2, I'm looking at my amendment here. Can I have a 1 minute recess?
Yeah, you know what, Senator, you'll have to have somebody else proffer that amendment. That would be your third
Okay, thank you.
amendment to the amendment.
Thank you.
So please ask somebody else to
Thank you.
proffer it.
Thank you.
So, yes. So Senator Lujan's been recognized. We'll take a 1 minute recess. Colleagues, in consultation with the clerk and also with legal, it would take the will of the body to amend the amendment more than twice. The amendment's been amended twice. Is there an objection to amending the amendment once again? Seeing and hearing none, Senator Tadegui, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I thank my colleagues for allowing this other particular amendment, which is in consultation with John Rick Mendiola of Customs, who's been working with the Oversight Chair regarding a specific area because the language was considered too broad and they wanted to zone it in on one particular area. So, colleagues, saving a tree here, go to the second to the last sentence that was underlined. So I'm going to take you from customs designated secured facilities to a designated place, and this is where you're going to insert the amendment, container, freight station, comma, or approved provisional inspection site. Then it goes back to prior to official release from customs custody. Again, we are inserting after place on the second to the last line of the amendment, container, place container, freight station, comma, or approved provisional inspection site, and continuing with prior to official release from customs custody. And that's the amendment.
On the amendment, and both movers, Senator Lujan, Senator Tadegui, to help the clerks and legal, please, since you wrote that out, unless there's any objection on the floor, bring that forward to the clerks and legal so that they can engross properly. On the amendment, to the amendment as approved by the floor, any discussion? Any objection? Seeing and hearing none. Amendment to the amendment passes. Colleagues, please, as a courtesy to everyone, and I understand, if you have proposed amendments when a mover is moving, please ask for a recess so that we can do the amendments at once, working with the author. But I think we're, being cordial, which is good, made the amendment better. But please, as we go forward, if you have language that you know that you're going to be moving, particularly when you hear the mover already amend the amendment, please ask for a recess and we can do it all at once. Thank you for your cooperation. On the motion, as amended, Senator Vice Speaker Atta, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and perhaps the author of the amendment, as amended and amended, further amended, would yield to a question. Who will pay for the movement of the container to and also from storage or placement of the container? And if the container needs to be returned to the shipping company, who will pay for that as well?
Does the author of the amendment yield?
My amendment,
yes.
Sir? Yes,
correct.
Sure. Okay, yes. This amendment will not alter any of the parties who are responsible for payment of moving anywhere. They normally are doing it at their request, the consumer or the company's request, that Customs is allowing it. So they're applying to Customs for permission to move it normally, and if that is granted, that is going to be at their expense, not Customs expense, if that's what you're asking. Yeah.
So then the other question should be, should it be in the amended in the amendment that all fees associated with movement of the container to and from or held, or any overage in having the container held over the X number of days, be bared by the consignee and not the agency?
Is that a question?
Yes.
Is he asking?
Is that a motion, Senator, or Vice Speaker, or is that a yield of a question?
It's a year question.
Senator Tynagui, or Tulay, you're
Sure. Yes, again, nothing in the bill that had the public hearing was intended to change any of the responsible parties or move the costs anywhere, except it remains on those parties who are either the recipients of the material or however they have designated it already. We are not going to include customs as bearing any of those costs that were in fact, absolutely not. So when they create their own like container freight station or a provisional inspection site, that's all on the company creating that provisional inspection site to have it up to specs, to have customs inspected and improve of it, and then on a case-by-case, a director may allow them to use it. And they do this right now. So for example, there are certain industries that import all the time, I think grocery stores, and so they have their own provisional inspection site that customs is already, they already operate like this. So they've already approved some of these. They fit the specs that customs wants, and but the story I was telling is that they had moved it to, not to one of those places, to just a kind of another site that had not met any of the customs protections or requirements, and so this just makes it a little stricter, that you can move it only to where customs allows you to move it, and only at their authority. It makes no wiggle room for anyone else authorizing you to move it for any reason.
Vice Speaker, you recognize.
Thank you. That answers my questions. Thank you for the yielding to the questions.
On the motion, on the amendment, anyone else wish to speak? Seeing and hearing none, would you like to close?
I'll yield closing.
Yield closing. Any objection to the amendment? Amendment carries.
Thank you.
Amended multiple times. You're welcome. The next amendment is, hopefully this is correct now, I believe it will be, TMT P174 VI, 5I, 51. Senator Tulay, you recognize.
Mrs. Masi. All right, so this is just another section of the same statute that already exists where there's a penalty for disobeying customs, but that penalty was $25,000. And as you know, the value of the freight that's actually in there or even the contraband might far exceed $25,000. And so this increases that civil fine up to $100,000. Well, actually, it says a fine not less than $100,000 and the seizure of the cargo involved. And it allows the Director of Customs to actually enforce this through the Department of Revenue and Taxation. So it allows them through Rev and Tax to file a request to suspend or revoke the violator's business license and or garnishment of any tax returns. Right now, under the statute, they're allowed to revoke their business license, but this just puts in the process, and on the back it tells you, it kind of pushes them more towards that, and if there's more than one violation, then there's an increased penalty. So this again is just to back up customs more, so that when they tell you you can't do that, there's an impact if you violate what they say. And it really backs up the directors. As you know, the directors change, and they're put into this very difficult position to really try to revoke somebody's business license for violating, the customs orders. And so this lays out very clearly what will be expected of the businesses, and only violators are going to be impacted by this amendment, by an increased fine, and on a second or third violation, the increased penalties, including revocation of business license. So I ask my colleagues for their support. Again, this was full support of customs, and they want this.
On the amendment, anybody wish to speak on the amendment? Senator Lujan, you recognize.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I respectfully, again, oppose this amendment and in consultation as well, working closely with CQA. And we appreciate the intent of this amendment, Mr. Chair. We all want, of course, our borders to be secured, strengthen, of course, customs enforcement, and ensure that imported merchandise is properly regulated. But this amendment does not reflect the logistical realities of ocean freight shipping or the practical operations of our local business community. The amendment will require any container placed on hold to remain strictly within the customs designated secure facility until inspection is complete. It would also create serious penalties, including heavy fines and even the possibility of revocation of a business license if a cargo seal is found to be compromised. The problem, Mr. Chair, is the chain of custody for cargo container is largely outside of Guam's control until that container actually arrives on our shores. Let's take the real-world example. A shipment of essential goods may begin in North Carolina. The container is packed and sealed at a warehouse, then picked up by a trucker. From there, it may be moved to a rail depot, transferred across the mainland United States, taken to a West Coast port, loaded onto a vessel, moved through a transshipment port, and then finally shipped across the Pacific to Guam. During that journey, Mr. Chair, there are 1,000 miles of travel, multiple handoffs, rail movements, crane lifts, vessel transfers, and harsh ocean conditions. Along the way, there may be opportunities for a seal to crack, wear down, break, or be altered without the knowledge of the fault of the local importer, holding Guam businesses liable for something they may have happened thousands of miles away is not fair and is not a sound policy. Revoking a business license is the death penalty for that particular company. We should not impose that level of punishment on a local importer unless there is clear evidence of wrongdoing, negligence, or intentional misconduct. If we pass this amendment as written, Mr. Chair, we will increase the cost and risk of doing business here on Guam. Shipping companies, wholesalers, distributors, and local merchants will be forced to price in that risk. That cost will not disappear, Mr. Chair. It will be passed on to consumers. That means higher prices for groceries, construction materials, household goods, and other essential items that our families already struggle to afford, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chairman, we can protect our borders without punishing honest local businesses for circumstances that may be beyond their control, and we can strengthen customs enforcement without creating a system that treats every compromised seal as proof of wrongdoing by the Guam importer. Our policies, of course, must be tough, but they also must be fair. This amendment, as written, is not fair to the business community and not fair to the people of Guam who ultimately pay. So in that regard, Mr. Chair, I respectfully oppose this amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator. On the amendment, anybody wish to speak on the amendment? Senator Perez and then Senator San Agustin. Senator Perez, you're recognized.
Okay. So yeah, so basically how I'm reading this is already in law. It exists that the business license, there is already in law that provides for suspension of the business license of principles involved in violation of this section, 1 year, and it just says 1 year. And so the suspension's already there, and the way it's worded, it's like in the event, so there shall be a fine of 100,000 and the confiscation of cargo involved. And so the added language is seized cargo meeting entry will only be released after payment of fine or reasonable payment arrangements are made in good faith. And so it also adds a buffer in some ways. In the event the payment arrangement is breached, the Director of Customs may file a request with DRT to suspend. So there is language here that I think helps to improve the existing law because otherwise it's an automatic suspension. And yeah, so already in law it exists that they are going to confiscate. And there's no ifs, ands, or buts. This added language allows some sort of leeway, I think, if I'm reading it correctly, that the customs director may file a request to suspend. So I think, yes, it's important when we're looking at, in general, right, when we're talking about violations, I think it's important to see, there's some factors involved, and I think this gives them that ability to look at that. I think the other thing, the importance of this amendment is that, with the meth crisis, these are for violators, right? And if you're a business that's following the law, then you should be fine. And, I think it helps to cover loopholes. It closes loopholes. And when we talk about if things are traveling across the U.S., I mean, those are, opportune times to slip in something, right? So we want to be very clear that, whoever is transporting these things, that they need to be sure that, these things are sacrosanct, right? They're not broken. The seals are not broken. And the other thing, when we look at violations, there are increased consequences with increased violations. And so that's what the current law does not have. So there are elements in this amendment that allows for some flexibility and consideration, but it also balances that it's increasing the consequences with increased infractions. So that's what I just wanted to add as I'm reading this, that to allay the fears, right, of what was stated earlier by the retiring speaker, I think it does provide that leeway. So just some thoughts. Thank you.
On the amendment, Senator San Agustin, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I read this amendment, I'm just trying to clearly understand what they're trying to get at. I mean, even the first paragraph, should the seal in a cargo container or cargo be broken or tampered with prior to its official release from customs? Then it says, except under the direction of the customs that the person or firm has accepted. I put for both you as the company that owns the container, if you accept it and it's broken, the seal, let customs first fix that. Determine where it was broken. Don't accept it and then worry about the fines. And then it goes further down, 100,000, goes from 25, jump to 100. Okay, I'm not gonna, I guess it could have its value based on what's in the cargo. But then when it goes down in the seized cargo meaning entry will only be released after payment of a fine or reasonable payment arrangements are made in good faith. They wrote a check. In the event payment arrangement is breached, how you breach when you just got a check? Or you just got paid? I'm trying to understand, how do you breach something when you already made the arrangement? It's got to go through the process. It just doesn't happen within 24 hours that it's breached. So, and then to ask, and the previous speaker said that there's already a mechanism to suspend when they need to suspend. Like was said earlier, I smell a rat. Let's say the director of customs could be a very, very serious guy or girl and say, you know what? We need more money in our what's that? What they call that? Fines and penalties revolving fund, the custom inspection funds. Because it goes further down, is that they even striked out the no expenditure shall be made from customs inspection fund except by appropriation. Oh, because you got full control of all your money. I look quick. So let's see how much money we can get from every vendor that's coming in, and see which business we should recommend they should be suspended. I thought we were supposed to help businesses. I support business because keeping business in business impacts our economy. To question it and to put all the regulations you want, but don't be willing to start chopping them down. Then it talks about, I'm just watching my time, so I'm good. First violation, waived in writing by the director. How can wave? Everything is all customs. Custom is a very powerful group of folks. I understand that. Shoot, when you arrive on Guam, even to the regular airlines, they inspect your cargo, they find something, got to know. You go, you're taken in. You do the same thing down at the Port Authority. If they find something, if you already accept control of that container, baby, it's yours, whatever happens after that. You can't run away from that. But if it comes off the boat, and the seal is broken, and the customs saw that, and you as the consignee is outside waiting to, hey, I got a container came in, yes sir, but are you willing to accept it? And not being told the seal is broken, you're liable. You guys are in control at the port. You tell me the seal is broken, you find out where it was broken, at what point it was determined. Don't put it on me as the person that wants to accept the container. That wouldn't be fair on the business. Oh yeah, you know, there's a lot of factors here involved, and I can understand why the Oversight Chair and Custom is objecting to it, because I think we need to massage this a little bit better. I agree we need to increase the penalties. I agree we need to get involved in this, but failure to satisfy the assessed fine shall result in confiscation, forfeiture, and disposal of cargo. You know, as a compliance supervisor for revenue tax, when we go into bars and we confiscate all their alcohol, you know what the beauty of that one? You never can get it back. We write a letter straight to the judge, the Attorney General's office, and the judges, request for disposal. We don't call the business owners and say, go and ask the court to get it back. No, it's gone. When we confiscate it, it's gone. Now with this one, to satisfy the fine, but you want to do garnishment? Now we're starting to act like GMH. If you don't pay your bill, you're going to garnish from you. Go through the process. And thank you, Mr. Chairman. Have a nice day.
On the amendment, anyone else wish to speak on the amendment? Senator Parkinson, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise in opposition to this amendment because it attempts to amend the Guam Administrative Rules and Regulations directly through legislation. This is not merely
Point of
a
order,
drafting.
Mr. Chair. It does not.
This
Senator
is not
Parkinson,
merely
you recognize.
a drafting preference. It is a question of orderly government, legal clarity, and public participation and institutional competence. The legislature writes laws. We write the law. Administrative agencies implement the law through rules and regulations. When we disregard that distinction and begin rewriting the GAR directly on the floor, we blur the line between statute and regulation, and we create unnecessary legal uncertainty. Guam already has an established process for adopting and amending administrative rules under the Administrative Adjudication Law. That's codified in 5 GCA Chapter 9. And that process exists for a reason. I probably should have spoke up on the previous amendment.
Point of information, Mr. Chair.
State your point of information.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the speaker is referencing. We are amending in this amendment 73143 of Chapter 73, Title 5, Guam Code annotated.
Senator Parkinson, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A floor amendment does not have the same safeguards as going through the proper public policy procedures. We do not have a complete administrative record before us. We do not have the benefit of a formal agency rulemaking process. We do not know whether every affected stakeholder has received notice. We do not know whether the agency has evaluated the amendment's enforcement consequences or any of the consequences from these changes. Fiscal effects, technical feasibility, or interactions with the rest of the regulatory code. We may be voting on language that sounds simple in isolation, but creates conflicts elsewhere. This is precisely why the administrative rulemaking is deliberative. The legislature should establish the controlling policy in the Guam Code annotated. We write the laws. The agency should then adopt the technical and operational rules necessary to carry out that policy, subject to public participation, legal review, executive review, and legislative oversight. This amendment reverses that process. It asks the legislature to perform the agency's technical rulemaking function without the agency record.
Point of information, Mr. Chair. It's not
Say your
making
point of
sense. We are
information.
amending Guam Code, Title 5, Guam Code annotated section 73143. We are amending a law.
Point of order.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker, please identify.
Point of information is to inquire for information. This is a deliberative and debating process. Let the individual senator finish. If there's
Point taken, Mr. Speaker. Thank you. Senator Parkinson, you're recognized.
Regardless of these many, many amendments trying to amend the GAR do, there's a principle on how we do these things. We, the legislature, make the laws, write the laws, edit the laws. The agencies come up with the policies to fit those laws. Not us do it ourselves. Directly legislating into the GAR can also freeze technical requirements into law. Administrative rules often concern forms, procedures, deadlines, inspections, reporting requirements, technical definitions, licensing standards, and operational details. There's so many things that go into the administrative rules. Those requirements may need to change as technology, industry practice, federal requirements, or agency capacity changes. Operating in this manner does not create efficient government. It's not transparent. It creates rigidity. The appropriate approach is straightforward. If the amendment author believes that existing policy is inadequate, then direct the responsible agency to promulgate conforming rules under 5 GCA Chapter 9. Set a deadline. Identify the subjects that the rules must address. Require reporting to the legislature. Then review the proposed rules when they are transmitted. This preserves the legislature's policymaking authority. And I'm out of time, but thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Parkinson. On the amendment, Senator Barnett, you're recognized.
Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to speak on the amendment, which, again, for the record, amends the Guam Code annotated. You know, I thought we were all on the same page about this crystal methamphetamine epidemic. But day by day in this budget process, I've been proven wrong as we choose to prioritize the 0.5% BPT rollback and that $40 million going to the big businesses in part 2 of the BPT rollback. And yet we've left unfunded services for those struggling with substance abuse. We've tried to explain to the people of Guam why we need less police on the streets, less customs officers on the streets. But what this amendment does is it addresses entry point for crystal methamphetamine and other contraband to come into Guam. You know, coming from the media, I interviewed Director Ike Pareto many times, and Director Pareto, customs officials, the Attorney General, Homeland Security investigations, all of them are in agreement that there's definitely crystal methamphetamine coming in from the Port Authority, but they haven't been able to crack the case, so to speak. And I'm sure there are many reasons why they're unable to. You know, in talking with federal law enforcement, one problem that they have is our community is very tight-knit, and it's very hard for them to get incriminating information, intelligence from even people that they capture bringing in meth, because the dealers that they're working for are, I guess, taking such good care of them that they don't want to tattletale, and they'd rather go to jail and serve out 5-10 years in prison than snitch on the man. And so I appreciate the efforts of the good senator and gentle lady from Jotnya, because she is taking the bull by the horns on this issue. And if you follow along with any of her bills that she's proffered relative to customs and the container sanctity and the whole process for the penalties, it's very similar to other work that she's done in identifying a problem and systematically working towards the actual solutions. And I get it, you know, the politics of personality in this hall. Sometimes ideas, amendments, bills are just going to be opposed, not for the substance that's contained in them, but they're going to be opposed simply because of who is putting these ideas and these solutions forward. And that, I think, is a real impediment to the progress that our people want to see. If we go out there and we talk to the people of Guam and ask them, do you think that we should penalize businesses with broken container seals, they're going to say yes, because, again, we're trying to combat this crystal methamphetamine epidemic. They do this in other jurisdictions. But the fear-mongering that's occurred this entire budget session, it's just frustrating. I mean, I'm almost going to fracture my eyeballs rolling my eyes at some of the things that are said in here, like saying that entertaining passing any of these amendments is going to lead to us paying more for groceries. That's ridiculous. These are meaningful solutions being put forth by the good senator, and again, just the logic, the deflection, the red herrings that we're hearing here on the floor. Never mind who's proffering the amendment. Let's discuss the merits of the ideas and the solutions, and I think that they're worthy of passage, especially when you consider how much damage our island has suffered at the hands of the crystal methamphetamine epidemic and the lack of political willpower to meaningfully address it for our people. Mr. Chair.
On the amendment, anyone else wish to speak on the amendments? Vice Speaker Ada, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And perhaps maybe just some clarification. You know, when I'm reading this here in section 73143, release of sealed cargo, are we talking about the seal on as the container was shipped onto the island, or are we talking about the customs seal? And I think that needs to be clarified, because I think there's sometimes a misunderstanding of what we mean by seal. And if the author would yield, which seal is she referring to on the release of sealed cargo?
Would the author yield?
Yes, and I want to thank my colleague for the question. It really shows that he understands what Customs is dealing with. Two different seals. One on shipping containers that seems to be not mandatory on Guam for some reason, and one that Customs puts on, the customs seals. So as you notice in this amendment, the non-underlined portion, that already exists in law. It already says, should the seal on the container. So we went through this whole process, and Customs believes this is relative to customs seals only. Well, I don't want to speak for them, but they interpret this for customs seals, I think. And however, there is another law that precedes this 73143, which is 73142, and it says release of sealed cargo. The seal on a container or cargo shall neither be broken nor tampered with, except under the direction of a customs inspector or until such container or cargo has otherwise been officially released from customs custody. So all of those mandates of the seals are just an existing law, and but they believe, I just don't like to speak for them, but their testimony was that this is customs seals. Yes.
And I think that's very important to understand, because as a shipping container is shipped from the United States or wherever the originating port is, it has a seal on it. It's a seal that's not as rigid or as sturdy that perhaps it should be. And all it does is has a tag number on it, and it indicates that the container was sealed at the port of origin prior to shipping. And sometimes those seals do break in transit, and it's unfortunate. The other seal, and that's why I asked for clarification, is the customs seal. And that's when the customs place a hold on a container, and they place this, it's almost like a deadbolt on it, a bolt that you can't remove unless you take some bolt cutters and cut it off. Now, that is placed on customs upon arrival, and they feel that your cargo needs to be inspected, and they place a hold on it. Now, if this, and I think maybe the sections of law actually need to be really clear, because if this is just the seal that the container was originally sealed with as it left its port of origin, this fine of $100,000 is really excessive, because sometimes the cargo that comes in, the value of the cargo is less than $100,000, and an individual would perhaps say, well, if the penalty is going to be $100,000, I just won't claim the container. Then not only are we going to have an issue of goods and products that may rise in cost because of this unfortunate, what do you call it, unintended consequences, that we really need to be clear so that these are the things that we're not putting into law that would actually hinder and perhaps even increase the cost of goods coming into Guam, because now this section of law has been changed. So before we, really look at putting these type of penalties and seizures of the cargo, that we make sure that we're on the right section of the law and that we're doing it in the right way, just to avoid unfortunate circumstances that cargo is being held or cargo is being confiscated, and actually that was not the intent to do, because of a seal that, and maybe this section might be the seal that the container is shipped in, or is it the previous section of law that is the customs seal? And I just really like to get that clarification in order to find the support for this. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
On the amendment, anyone else wish to speak on the amendment? Seeing and hearing none, the mover may close.
Thank you. There's a lot of, I guess, arguments being made. I'd like to try to clarify them if they are open to hearing what I have to say. It is, I am not amending what the law prohibits. The law already prohibits any breaking or tampering with seals on a container or cargo. That has existed actually since the 1990s, maybe 1990. It's existing law. And they are operating under it. It requires that nobody, no matter what kind of container, can intentionally break those seals before customs has a chance. But my amendment to the budget bill is simply amending that portion of our customs law, not that prohibits, because it is already prohibited. It's amending the part that had a $25,000 fine that was established in 1990 and increasing it to $100,000. And this is a change in the law. And to clarify that, because it's a larger fine, it just specifies that you can do it in installments if the director agrees. And if you violate those installments, the director has recourse through the Department of Revenue and Taxation. And it helps the director to enforce what his current obligation is, which they have not been enforcing, is if they find this intentional, they can not only fine, but as you see on the back, subsection 2I, existing law, they can suspend the business license of all the principals involved in the violation for 1 year. That's existing law. The rest of these changes are at customs request. From their director all the way down, they had a meeting and went over this with a fine-tooth comb and made these recommendations and testified at the hearing that this they need very much to help them to put some teeth behind their actions so that they can stop the meth. So they are the one who asked for an increased penalty if there is more than one violation. And so that's all this does. It increases the penalties. It doesn't change what the violation is or make a new violation. It should not impede any business that's not violating existing law. No business should be impacted by this unless they intentionally violate existing law. It actually helps the business because in the prior law, there was no discretion at the director, but they were taking the discretion, and this puts in writing that there will be some discretion of the director to waive the suspension of the business license if the director puts it in writing his analysis of the degree of culpability, meaning if he thinks it was negligence, gross negligence, fraud, an accident. That allows him to take that into consideration. So there should be no negative impact on any business that is trying to comply with the law. But those who are not, or who intentionally violate, like we did see recently, who removed the cargo container, not at customs, without customs consent, they should be prosecuted and they should be penalized. And they should be penalized and prosecuted because those are the theories of how we're going to deter meth. First, we're going to allow customs the ability to inspect these containers before anything gets distributed out of them. Second, we are going to deter them from doing it in the first place because customs now has the ability that they have asked for to increase their fines, to make it worth the penalty. In other words, meth is valuable. And if your fine is too low, it's nothing to pay $25,000 and just keep bringing it in.
Thank you, Senator.
So I ask my colleagues for their support on this. It's just increasing the civil fine on a public law that has been in place since 1990.
Thank you, Senator. On the amendment, there has been an objection. All in favor of the amendment, please indicate by raising your hand. Motion fails. Colleagues, we are on the next amendment, TMT P174 VII.
Did you recognize me, Mr. Chair? Yes?
Yes,
Okay,
Senator Chalal, you recognize.
Yes. Again, this is a related provision, not affected by the defeat of the last one that increased penalties. This changes the GAR, yes. It changes the rules to make it consistent with the law that now exists. And it's very, very minor changes. For example, the old days, they used to call it the Director of Commerce, because customs was under commerce. And now we are changing the word commerce to customs, so that this rule will now say Director of Customs or Chief of Customs. And this is when an importer requests for a container to be inspected, they're going to make their request to these people. And it specifies, again, existing rules that they have to provide certain information to customs for that special request. They have to give a map to the business establishment, and I added the word or premises at the request of customs. That the special request shall be granted based on availability of customs and quarantine personnel. And in parentheses, it says regular office hours or, and this is all existing law, and I'm adding, our off-duty service request. And this is because this is actually what they are doing. So this puts them into compliance with their rules that they are not always able to handle this within regular office hours, and they are using off-duty service requests. In other words, the officers that are off-duty are responding to these requests. And this just puts it all so that everybody has a fair shake at it. They know what the rules are, and they're going to follow it, and it makes it immediate so that there's no further delay. And it says requests will be considered on a case-by-case basis. That's consistent with what exists in the current rules. It just picked up the language from entertained to considered. And the fourth one is priority. Instead of a first-come, first basis, it says shall generally be given on a first-come, first-served basis unless operational or enforcement priorities dictate otherwise. And they explained to me that this includes perishable goods. Sometimes they prioritize those. Or if there's a greater risk, such as things that are infested or anything that they think creates a greater risk to the public safety, they may prioritize, and they do that right now. So there's no change again into what they're doing. It's just changing these rules to match what they are doing. And on the back page, you'll see it's again changing the word commerce to Director of Commerce to Director of Customs and C. So C is really the new provision, which talks about the earlier amendment regarding the provisional inspection site that the chairpersons of Oversight of Customs here added into that. It's a provisional inspection site, and this just says how they operate with these provisional inspection sites. And again, they do this right now. So they submit a request for a provisional inspection site to the director, and it contains the following information. And so that is so that the director can review it, see if it's adequate, or if there's any risk of that site not being, what customs wants, how secure customs wants it to be, to move these again away from customs onto your own business premises or some other site. So it allows them to continue commerce the way they are doing it now. It just puts in writing for them immediately so that we do not have incidences like they did of moving these onto like random sites, and that sites must be approved by customs now with very regular requirements as they already require. So I hope that I can get my colleagues' support again. This is at customs request. These are our front lines on meth and other contraband. And if we're going to put our money where our mouth is, then we need to help them. And we should do it sooner rather than later. So that's why I'm trying to include it in this budget bill, because the hearing has already passed. They overwhelming consent to the bill, and they want this language. They say it will help them in their enforcement efforts, and that's what we're trying to do here to stop meth. Situs Masi.
On the amendment, anyone wish to speak on the amendment? Yeah, this is on the amendment. Would you like to speak on the amendment, Senator Lujan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've got an amendment to the amendment. So you
sure. You would like to proffer an amendment to the amendment?
Yes.
You're recognized, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I am in full agreement with the amendment. The only thing is I want to also, like we did with the very first amendment, where we add the word, because this one already recognizes or inserted Chief of Customs, but after Chief of Customs, there's two places here in this amendment where it has Director of Customs and Chief of Customs. Then we just maybe insert or their designee.
Can you reference what number, what letter, where you're at, under which provision?
Section A, 1, 2, 3, the third line where it says, or Chief of Customs, third line, comma, or their designee.
Chief of Customs.
Third line, yeah.
Or their designee. Does everybody understand the amendment? Do you have other language, Senator?
Yeah, yes, and then on the...
You know, I recommend that you just proffer it all at once.
Yes.
So, colleagues, this is one amendment. It's just that he's doing it within the sections, not multiple amendments, okay? So he's letting us know line by line where we are, okay? So did everybody understand the first line that the senator is amending? Okay.
Section A, that was Section A.
Okay, now we're going to the back page.
Yes, back page.
And please indicate where you are, Senator.
Section B.
Section B, okay?
Yes. Where it says Chief of Customs or Director of Customs, again, or their designee.
Okay. Under B, folks, same amendment again, Customs.
Or their designee for approval, yeah, or their designee.
Does everybody understand the amendment to the amendment? Anyone wish to speak on it? Any objection? Senator, you're good with no close, right?
No close, I'm good.
No objections? Amendment to the amendment carries. Anything else, Senator?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay. Any other senator on the amendment? Senator Parkinson on the amendment as amended.
So when I think of how our government works, the legislature changes laws, and then the Guam Code annotated. And the Guam administrative rules are done by the executive branch through the AAA process. So, you know, it begs questions like, if we enact language directly into the GAR through public law, what exactly does that language become? Is it still an administrative rule that GAR can change at any time? Could GAR, through the AAA process, change something that we put into their rules through statute? Or has it effectively become statutory law that only the legislature may change? If the agency later adopts a conflicting regulation, which provision controls? If the compiler of laws places legislative language directly into the GAR, are we creating a regulation with the legal force of a statute? These are not academic questions. They affect enforcement, judicial review, agency authority, and the legal rights of every person subject to the regulation. Directly legislating into the GAR can also freeze technical requirements into law. If we legislate those details directly, even a minor correction may require another bill, another hearing, another legislative session, another gubernatorial action. Administrative rules often concern many things: forms, procedures, deadlines, inspections, reporting requirements, technical definitions. If we legislate those all directly, even something very minor, it can really mess things up. If the amendment author believes that existing policy is inadequate, then amend the Guam Code to clearly establish the desired policy. Direct the agency to promulgate rules. Set a deadline. The issue before us is not whether the policy objective is worthy. I happen to believe it is. The issue is whether we are using the proper legal vehicle. Good intentions do not cure defective process. A rule adopted without the proper record may be poorly written, internally inconsistent, difficult to enforce, or vulnerable to litigation. The people of Guam deserve regulations developed transparently, carefully, and with the participation of those that will be affected. We should put policy in the Guam Code annotated, and we leave implementation in the GAR. We should not bypass the administrative process simply because a floor amendment appears faster. I seem to recall we used to have a lot of problems with moving faster. As they said, speed is not always efficiency, and legislation is not improved by avoiding the procedures designed to prevent mistakes, accountability. For those reasons, I respectfully oppose the amendment and urge the author to withdraw it and return with statutory language directing the appropriate agency to conduct formal rulemaking under the AAA process, under the law. Not try to muddy the separation of powers by directly legislating into the executive branch administrative rules. So I oppose this amendment, Mr. Chair, and I ask my colleagues to do so as well. Thank you.
On the amendment, anybody else wish to speak on the amendment? Amendment as amended. Seeing and hearing none, would the author like to close? Oh, excuse me. Senator San Agustin, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Are we on the designee amendment?
No, that passed already. Okay. We are now on the amendment as amendment, the main motion, ma'am. Senator San Agustin, you're recognized.
You know, I have no problem when we want to change GAR, but I think we all need to understand what is GAR, right? Guam Administrative Rules, right? Those are something written by the agency of their interpretation of the law. If we change the law, it's done. Now we're interpreting what GAR is for that agency? How I assume? You know, something just don't sound right. We pass a law, the intention is written. When they write the GAR, they follow the intention of the law that was passed, and that's where they create GAR. So, if the body wants to change GAR, then so be it. Then tomorrow somebody will write a bill and then just change what the GAR was interpreted, because why? It changed the whole format. It said it's not GAR no more, it's section by section by section, period. No interpretation. You don't need a bunch of folks from an agency telling you how to read a law. That's why we write the intention of the bill so it reads it out. Other than that, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Have a nice day.
On the amendment, as amended, would the mover like to close? Yes.
Yes,
Senator
thank you very much.
Shalai.
Again, this amendment, yes, it amends the Guam rules. The rules that are supposed to be consistent with Guam law. And when we amended the Guam law earlier, we are making this rule consistent with that. Otherwise, we would be removing Customs' ability to enforce that new changed law to its fullest extent. And we are removing any impediment by changing the rules to match that law today. And it's such very minor changes. And this amendment, while you might not like the style of amending the GAR, is not a violation of the law like putting in purported procurement reform in violation of 2 GCA 2108, a very explicit statute. Nothing in here amending the GAR to match the updated titles of the customs and to match the law that, or the floor amendment that we passed earlier. Nothing affects customs' ability to continue as mandated by law to improve their rules, to add additional rules, to change their rules. Nothing impedes their ability to do that. This is a rules process that was made by the legislatures way before us and continues to work up until today. And again, if we just get back to the merits of what we're trying to do here, we're just trying to help customs to prevent containers from being moved against their consent to places that they do not agree to, and to give them the ability and everyone a fair playing ground by having the rules written out. Not just as they are practiced, but written out, consistent with the law, as to what a provisional inspection site must require. That's the only real substance in here. The rest, I hope they're not objecting to changing the names of and allowing the off-duty service requests to handle these requests for inspection. So again, it's all of these together are supposed to help customs at their request to enforce the existing laws, to enforce violations of existing laws, to deter violations of existing laws, especially those that bring in meth, to deter meth from our community, to deter the impacts of substance abuse and the impacts of the crime that the substance abuse brings. And we know we haven't fully funded all the rehab and detox programs necessary for Guam. We haven't fully funded the cycles necessary for Guam because those amendments were ruled out of order. So this is the least we can do, is let those who are working on our front lines have all the tools that they have requested. Especially, it's this particular one is quite minor. It just interprets what a provisional inspection site is going to be. And that actually benefits businesses because they can establish provisional inspection sites that meet customs requirements. They're all laid out very clearly. And this is actually to their great benefit. So again, I ask my colleagues to put aside any personal things you might have, or because I objected to your amendments earlier. I do that in sincerity. And I try to base it on a principle that I can cite. And so I just ask for your support to change these rules to match the previous amendment that we made in the law so that Customs can enforce this law immediately and not be hampered by any made-up impediment. Situs Masi, Mr. Chair.
On the amendment, as amended, there has been an objection. All those in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. Yes, Senator Parkinson did object. All those in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. Amendment carries. Colleagues, we are on the next amendment. Next amendment is TMT P174 VIII. Senator Chula, you recognize.
Mr. Chair, this amendment was going to be to change the rules, the rules, to match a prior amendment, but that amendment failed, unfortunately. And it's really very unfortunate because there was a lot of hard work by Customs put into this. And again, it was going to just be to increase the fines and increase the penalty after repeated violations. Not to change anything about the existing law, but just the fines. And as you know, that amendment failed, so I'm going to have to withdraw this change to the rules until we can get that passed. Thank you.
Amendments withdrawn. Colleagues, we are now on Amendment TMT P174IX. Senator Chula, you recognize.
Thank you. All right, so this is a little bit different because this is provision 55.75.1 to be added to the Criminal Code in Title IX, Guam Code Annotated. This is a law. We are adding that it is criminal to tamper with Customs and Quarantine Agency seals. So in addition to the civil penalties provisions that are really so low at $25,000 right now because my amendment didn't pass, this gives them the option of prosecuting a person, and it says a person is guilty of tampering with Customs and Quarantine Agency seals if he or she intentionally breaks, removes, alters, or defaces any seal placed by Customs upon any container or cargo prior to its official release from Customs custody. And B, tampering with a Customs and Quarantine Agency seal is a felony of the 3rd degree. So again, this is not going to affect any businesses who are lawfully abiding by the law because they would not be intentionally breaking, removing, altering, or defacing a seal, right? It's only going to affect those who they can prove have done this intentionally. And I think it's very fitting that Customs have this authority to send them for prosecution for those intentional violations of these Customs seals. Again, it's a very small protection that the people of Guam have. We move in tons of cargo. So many containers. So many of them go uninspected. So many of them Customs by their, methodology rules fit for release without ever inspecting them. We'd like to give them more officers so that they can inspect more. But in the meantime, when they do require that those be sealed or those be held, we want to give them full authority when they finally do that to hold those people accountable. So this is what that would do, is it creates a criminal penalty, and again, this is at the request of Customs as well. They fully support this.
On the amendment, Senator Lujan, you recognize.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I'm not in opposition to the amendment. It's a point of information, inquiry, and maybe not necessary to the author, but maybe to yourself or maybe to legal, because we're in a budget session, Mr. Chair, and we are changing criminal law today, so it makes it a 3rd degree felony. Can we amend criminal code in a budget bill, Mr. Chair?
Let me take a 1-minute recess.
Of course.
Colleagues, in my consultation with legal, in line with all the rulings that I've made, it is deemed available to be debated on the floor, and the body shall make a decision whether or not there's an objection, and the floor's vote and rules will be such as the floor deems, consistent with all my rulings and all my presentation of amendments eligible for the floor. Senator Luan, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank
So,
you.
colleagues, debate away. Any debate on the motion? Senator San Augustine, you're recognized.
No, I just wanted to make a comment that I'm in support of this. Let me start with that. Number one, and then, as everyone knows, that majority of the time when a container comes in, the value is already at grand larceny, or it's over $2,000-3,000 or $1,000. Then it just keeps elevating, keeps going up. I don't know if any container comes in that's worth only $1,000 unless Senator Borah brings in something like Bootsy, then of course I can understand that. But other than that, because she asked the amendment is to raise the felony of third degree, I support that. Because once you break the seal, that's thousands and thousands of dollars of goods in that container. And we don't know, in fact, like she's mentioned before, if there's meth in there and they broke the seal for the intention of taking it out. Somebody needs to go to jail for that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
On the amendment that's proper on the floor, Vice Speaker Ada, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this is the customs and quarantine seal that I was mentioning in the earlier amendment, that there are two different types of seals, and Speaker Blas actually had a picture of it. And I think that absolutely, if they tamper or destroy or even break this seal, that there should be penalties, and perhaps maybe that the author of this amendment may want to amend her amendment and take the penalties that was on the previous amendment to place here, because then now we are talking about a seal that was placed on by Customs and Quarantine that is a controlled item here on Guam and controlled by our local customs. So I just wanted to make that absolutely clear and see how this will go now forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
On the amendment properly placed on the floor, Senator Parkinson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, I love having the debates in this hall, but I always like the debates when the debates come from an honest place, from a place of true principle. So when people come into this chamber and say, I have a principle that I am not going to violate, and I don't want you to violate it as well, I can respect that. I can respect that. I might not agree with some of those principles, but I can respect the principle. But I have an absolute personal pet peeve against the double-sided speaking, where all day I had to hear about no public hearing on this, no public hearing on that, not related to the subject matter. Oh my God, the cats love the dogs and the sky is gonna fall. But when it comes time to our own amendments, our amendments are like little angels, free from criticism, pure as the driven snow. I think this bill, this rider, is a good bill, and I support it. I just want to comment on, once again, the hypocrisy. The hypocrisy. If you want to hold this as a principle, God bless you, I respect that. But the disingenuousness of that argument, it wears on you. It wears on you. This is a good bill. This is a good time to deliberate this. And I respect and I commend the chair for himself being consistent. Because really, I could go either way on this policy. We could have him on the floor, we could not have him on the floor. But let's be consistent about it. Let's not call everybody in this chamber the devil and smell rats everywhere we are when they introduce amendments. But our amendments are just for the good nature of the people of Guam. We're all in here trying to do the best we can. We all have honest-to-God disagreements. But if you're going to come in here and espouse this principle about not putting these riders on, but then when it comes time for your turn, you have no problem doing it, then I don't want to hear it no more. I don't want to hear it. It's unprincipled and it insults our intelligence. I have honest-to-God lines. And you could ask members of this body, I'll be honest to them about what those lines are. We will argue in good faith. We'll be able to get good amendments and good legislation and good things passed. I have fundamental disagreements about this budget that I'm going to be voting no on. But it's because I'm honest about what those principles are and I try to maintain to them. And I ask my colleagues to do the same because, honestly, we're all better than that. And the people of Guam deserve better than that. They deserve honest debate and not grandstand-a-thon before the election. Worry about what you're going to do when you're governor. Right now, do the job in front of you as best as you possibly can. With that, I support this amendment, Mr. Chair. I will be voting in the affirmative for it, and I thank the sponsor for proffering it. I would just consider some self-reflection. And with that, Mr. Chair, I yield the rest of my time. Thank you.
On the amendment, anyone wish to speak on the amendment? Speaker Blas, you are now recognized on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Chair, if the author can yield to a question, and the question is basically, isn't there an existing statute already for tampering with the customs seal?
Would the author yield?
Yes. The existing code sections regarding tampering with customs seals are the ones we discussed earlier. Those are civil violations and civil penalties. This, surprisingly, does not exist yet, that there is a criminal penalty specifically to tampering with customs seals.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
While I support,
Mr. Speaker.
While I support basically the amendment in general, I'm just concerned. I just don't want to there be any confusion with regards to what penalty is supposed to be applied. Because here, it provides for a criminal penalty. And there I have another question, but my concern here is that while a penalty already exists, granted that it is civil, is there anything in that language that basically prohibits, or will it go in conflict? Is it one or the other? And so, if I can just get a moment's recess to confer with legal and the proffer of the amendment, so that way there's no conflict in the imposition of a penalty should this occur.
1 minute recess. The committee holds back in order. Senator Tulay. 1 minute recess. We're back in order. On your amendment, Senator. Committee of the Whole is back in order. Senator Tulay, you recognize.
All right, can you just refresh my memory? Are we on closing now, or are we in response to?
Yeah. So
I thought it was the speaker.
Yeah, it was with the speaker asked you a question, so you're yielding to the question.
Yes, already.
And we took a recess to check legal. What's going on?
Thank you for the opportunity. I did speak with the author and with legal, and there is no conflict. I just wanted to make sure that double jeopardy didn't exist in this thing, and it doesn't. So I'm satisfied with that. However, I'd like to make an amendment to this amendment.
Please proceed, Speaker.
It calls that it's guilty of tampering and that it's a third degree, felony in the third degree, but it also has defaces as, one of the ways of tampering. Defaces actually is criminal mischief, which is actually a misdemeanor. So I would like to be able to delete defaces or defaces.
On the amendment to delete defaces.
Yes.
Is there any objection to the amendment? Seeing, hearing none, amendment to the amendment carries. Still have the floor.
I'm done. Thank you.
On the amendment as amended. Anyone else wish to speak? We are on TMT P174IX, tampering with customs and quarantine agency seals. Anyone else? Say again. The amendment to the amendment was to delete the word defaces in A. In A, line 2 in A, the word defaces or defaces. There was no objection, so the motion carried. Anyone wish to speak on the amendment? Seeing and hearing none, the author may close.
I just want to thank my colleagues for their consideration of this amendment that makes it a criminal penalty to tamper, break, intentionally remove, or alter a customs and quarantine seal on a container. Jesus Masi for your consideration.
On the amendment, are there any objections as amended? Seeing, there's an objection? Is that an objection, Senator Jess? Okay, there is an objection. All in favor of the amendment as amended, please indicate by raising your hand.
To the criminal one? We take a
Seeing and hearing no objections as having been withdrawn, amendment passes. We are now, colleagues, on amendment SFP L11 P174. This is proffered by Senator Perez. Senator Perez, you're recognized.
Yes, so again, sorry, if you can repeat it, my colleague didn't hear.
Yes, we are on SFP L11 P174. You're recognized, Senator Perez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this amendment actually had a public hearing on February 17th of this year. And what it proposes to do is it proposes to appropriate 20% of use tax to Department of Public Health and Social Services Environmental Health Revolving Fund. And so this particular division is generally underfunded, but it has tons of mandates. And so when the testimony was provided, it was supported by all those that were present. Of course, there was a member from the Department of Public Health, but was testifying as a private citizen. There were representatives from the regional, let me just pull this up really quickly. It's the regional vector. So there's several representatives throughout the region that represent mosquito-borne illness and how to stop them. In addition, there were members from the United States too as well that collaborate with the Department of Environmental Health to lower, that address the many of the mandates that Department of Environmental Health covers. And so it was very clear during the public hearing that it almost appeared that there was a crisis within the Department of Environmental Health. And so if I can just quote some of the testimony given by a member that works there. So she states, DEH has historically been underfunded and primarily reliant on local funds. Federal grants have been competitive, short-term, and limited. And prior to 2000, division relied solely on general fund and later supplemented by special funds, including the Environmental Health Revolving Fund. However, annual appropriations from these sources have not been sufficient to meet all statutory mandates. So as you know, Department of Environmental Health is responsible for sanitary permits, and so they oversee the schools, child care centers, and many restaurants. And so they have a large, I think over 3,000 establishments that they have to inspect. And so because it's so much, considering the capacity that they have to prioritize the most vulnerable population, which are the child care and schools. And so that's one area that they are responsible for. The other area that's really critical for our businesses here is inspecting goods that come through the ports. And so let me just pull up that part of it, the testimony. And so they have stated that, so in inspecting these things that come in, there are nearly 200 detention cases involving over 100,000 imported articles that remain pending as of that time when the testimony was provided in February. And so they have a partnership with the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, which is really important to help facilitate help to meet their mandates. So what they do is that in collaboration with the Customs and Quarantine, they have to identify what's called violative consumer commodities at ports of entry that's resulting in a dramatic increase in enforcement activities at the ports. And so they're saying that levying the use tax is expected to improve and help all recipients. And this would allow DH to modernize its operations by developing its own integrated regulatory platform in collaboration with Customs and Quarantine and the implementation of Azacuda. They also stated the primary barrier to meeting statutory obligations. So they have 200 specific statutory mandates across 24 broad areas. And so the primary barrier to meeting these statutory obligations is insufficient personnel, including both inspectors and administrative support staff. And so when grants, procurement, or customer service roles are vacant, inspectors absorb those duties. And between 2021 and 2025, DEH filled 31 vacancies but lost 34 employees, including 16 inspectors. And even if all funded vacancies were filled, staffing would still fall short. Internal assessments indicate that nearly 100 personnel are needed for adequate operations. Current staffing and funded vacancies amount to less than half that number.
Thank you, Senator. On the Perez Amendment, anyone wish to speak on the Perez Amendment? Senator San Agustin, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hopefully the author can break it down. 20%, what is the total? Where is the use tax today being used for, and what does 20% equate to?
Does the author yield?
Okay, so my understanding, and of course OFB can corroborate this, is that use tax is part of the appropriations, the general fund appropriations. So it's hard to really delineate where that money is going, right? And so, but the one thing in law is that 20% is already earmarked for CQA, Customs, 20% is earmarked for Guam EPA, and 20% is earmarked for DPW. So, but then again, when we approach the budget session, that money, I don't know, you would have to ask OFB where that money is going, because I think it's kind of a one big pot under the appropriations.
Mr. Chairman, the only reason I'm asking, because if I heard it correctly, 20% is to 20% for each agency has CQA, OPA, and DPW. Am I correct? Is that what I heard?
GIPA, but again, it's never been, I don't believe it hasn't been truly followed, because from my understanding, of course you can corroborate this with OFB, that it's really put in one big pot and then it's appropriated throughout the government.
And the only reason why I'm asking that is because we need to know what it equates to. Because the different agencies have a lot of mandates. Public health is no different. And I'm just curious to know, what does 20%
Yes, so I can answer that question.
What is it equal to? What's the dollar?
Yeah, so just with this budget alone, for the FY27 budget, the use tax is $8 million, 8.5 million, and so 20% is 1.7 million.
So, Mr. Chairman, with that information, I'd like to get a short recess. Let me go check OFB on what is the impact, because if this money is ready distributed.
Yeah, so no, actually, if I can also highlight, if you don't mind, I did put an enactment date of the following, so in October 1st, 2027. So it doesn't touch this particular budget cycle. So it's a delayed enactment.
1 minute recess. Colleagues, we are going to go on dinner break from 5 to 6. Please be back at 6 sharp. We will go until 10, and if we do not finish, we will make a motion to extend the clock. We are in recess.